Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today we're bringing you 10 rules for Revive that you're likely missing. Why do we know they're probably missing these rules?
Well, I've seen people miss these rules or misunderstand these rules.
You've seen just a general overflow.
Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's you.
Sometimes it's me. Listen, we've come to the conclusion that rule books and the rules for a board game are kind of like an extended journey of telephone. I learned the game, and then I played the game multiple times, and I hear from a few other people who also read the same rulebook but came back with different conclusions, and they tell me something new, and then I take that to the next game group and get taught the game by someone who played it more recently than I, and I don't quite remember the rulebook because it was 4 or 5 months ago, but I'm pretty sure they're wrong, but we don't double check, and things get codified and solidified, and you end up realizing that some very simple rules you're either overlooking, completely missing, or playing backwards, and yet the game still maintains itself and still is fun, which is a remarkable trait of the board game industry. Despite playing wrong, the fates always balance themselves out.
Yep, you still have fun.
For the most part. So, if you're watching this, thank you for being here. We have a full gameplay. We added this to our list of top games from 2024 that we discovered because this is potentially one of the biggest games you've found.
For me, this is one of the best games I've discovered in the last year.
In recent history. And we, of course, are working on a few other videos, like a full right for you, wrong for you video where we break down the nuances between, whether or not this is a game that will actually get onto your shelf and then onto your table. And hopefully a quick start guide that'll help people get up and running as soon as possible.
Yep.
So with that being said, let's talk about the rules that they're probably going to miss when they sit down to play. If they don't watch this video, literally, I think every time before they play this game.
Yeah, probably every time.
Just a good refresh. Yep. They'll skip the beginning section where I've talked for. I'm going to just take a sip of my.
All right. So one of the things that people, especially if there's been a few months in between gameplays, which often happens, people will get confused on some of the iconography. So iconography, like I'm showing right here, these are blue points. These are the points that you're scoring in-game along this track. Something that people miss is if you go all the way around, you do not collect this resource a second time.
Ooh.
Yes,
I would have missed that.
Yeah, you get to here, you're at 50, but you're just getting points. You are not getting another crate, another artifact.
So there's no higher level overflow. Once you've killed the line, you've killed the line.
Yep. Once you get to 25, you've gotten your last bonus, benefit. And after that, it's just points.
And just to note for idiots like me, the purple are endgame only. Every time I unlock and settle some regions on the board, I always turn because I'm like 2 steps away from a crate or the next gemstone, and I go, hey, do I get 2 points?
Yep. These are endgame, so that's the second part of this point is these purple points are endgame scoring points. These do not add to this track until the end of the game.
So blue score immediately in the game. However, if you happen to wrap the track, which is something that's possible to do, especially in longer, higher player count versions of the game, you're not going to double up the resources, which is kind of disappointing in my opinion, because I would like a few extra crates, especially at the end of the game. And purple are going to be end game scoring only, so if you're like me and you think you're going to be able to get a extra advantage by settling a population, you're not going to get those points until you calculate them after someone has grabbed and closed the game.
Yep. And speaking about closing the game.
Point number two.
Whoever takes the last artifact, that is your last turn. You don't get to play another full round and back to you.
It'd been 2 or 3 months since we'd played, and we just did a 3-player with my wife off camera. And I have played before. I was familiar enough with the game. However, there's a lot of games out there that actually allow a full round overflow if you're the person that ends it.
Now, the nuance here is every other player gets a final turn.
That's the problem.
But the person who takes the last artifact, that is your last turn.
So there's a lot of games where if you're the person that closes the game, you'll actually get one last round or one last sequence because you've triggered end game, but it's not completely over. Or you'll play until first player goes. You'll hit that trigger. Here, it's a little bit different. Like you said, if you close the game, you get the bonus 4 victory points. You get to grab them off this pile over here. You don't get another turn.
Yep.
That cost me
additional artifacts.
I think the victory
is where you get these minor artifacts. So if all the crystals, all the artifacts are gone and you would have gotten an artifact, that's where you take these tokens. I don't know that this is a rule that people miss necessarily, but if you're kind of unfamiliar with the game, you might forget to take this.
Point number 3.
So that's something to keep in mind. So point number 3 is when it comes to hibernating, okay?
Hibernating is the or action that you can take. You can take your primary actions. You get 2. You could, do things like flip your switch, play a card, build a settlement, whatever. Or, core, or you recall everything.
Yep, it's kind of like your cleanup action. You're going to move up on this track. When you do it, for example, we have spots on this 3rd level of the track here. You can take that resource or any resource below it.
There's no icon here that indicates that you can take anything down. You just have to remember that as high as you are, everything's viable. And sometimes, a little tech tile here or a crystal and a victory point can be better than a crate.
Yep. So absolutely, especially if that point is going to get you like that extra artifact. And you're like, that's going to hit me the threshold. I take that, trigger endgame,
don't get another turn,
secure my 30-point loss.
Be a little bit upset about it. Stuff like that can happen. There is one other thing that's important when it comes to this track as well. When you move into the threshold where you have the big red negative artifact symbol and the lightning bolt, this is not a choice. You can choose whether or not you take the lightning bolt. You could choose to take a crate. You could choose to take the victory point and the crystal. You could choose to take the little tech resource, or whatever it is, the module. However, the big glowing red remove scoring artifact.
Yep, and it comes from the board. It doesn't come from anyone's player board. It comes from the board, but that gets removed from the game. This is mandatory.
Yeah. So even if you don't take the lightning bolt, you still have to do that part.
Absolutely.
Point number 4, I think.
All right.
We're putting like 12 points in each point.
Yeah, we're putting multiple, so this is like bonus content. All right. When you build buildings, this juicy building right here.
I thought your bonus content only went on the other website, but
that's only games.
Thrilled it's here as well.
You get to score on, you get to move up on your gray track, your yellow track, your gray track. You get what's in the water. You get what's in this water. If you build a large building there.
Small buildings get you one of everything.
Large buildings get the double benefits, right?
Double everything.
So you double the gray, double the gray again, double the yellow.
Double the 3.
You do not double the water.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if you're experienced with the game, you probably remember because you've messed it up a few times. Therefore, you've had to recall because it was traumatic when you realized you weren't going to get 6 victory points or 2 tech tiles or whatever advantage you were hunting for. Mm-hmm. As the game progresses for new players, you're going to find that people instinctively want to and plan big turns around placing next to lakes, and they'll realize that that big turn is not as powerful as they thought it was going to be. On top of that, another mistake that we've seen that actually crushed someone's gameplay, I've already built here. Mm-hmm. Place the double. I didn't get the second set of victory points. I'm aware of that. I'm okay with that. However, I want to build over here as well. I get 3 more points?
No, you actually only count that water once.
Yeah, you can only score 1 per lake, and it's a pretty rigid 1 per lake.
Right. There is a special advanced player board, so the moon side has some advanced. There is stuff out there where a character has an ability to go out and get a second water, but that is the Hofstadter.
Specifically asymmetric.
Right. Hofstadter from Big Bang Theory only has that ability. Okay. So this character here would have that ability. Wait, is this the moon side? Yeah, this guy right here. So he can place a temple on water and claim that reward. You do not have to have that already secured, so you do not have to have built around it, but you do get to take a second water if you then additionally have built or will build around that water
again. Just one specific character, though. Yep. Point number 5, I think, is that we're going to?
I think that's where we're at. So existing buildings, going with a building theme is, if I've built this building here and this has not yet been flipped, all right, we're missing a tile here. It's this one. Later on, when you flip this tile, whoever places it there, whether it's yourself or someone else, if there's a resource near it, you get that resource.
Yeah, this is particularly important when you have a little bit more of a chaotic game. You're playing with a higher player count, and players are taking turns while you're maybe a little bit distracted, focusing on the next cards that you want to play.
Yep.
Whatever your big engine's going to be, you might run into situations where people have flipped and revealed tiles and placed something down next to a building that you're in. You need to make sure that you're pausing, paying attention to that, because skipping over or missing some of these chaining points or chaining engines.
So much of this game is things happen on your turn, but this is one of those things that can happen on other people's turns. And I've seen people miss this because
they're so internalized, they're so focused on their own play, they don't remind people, or they're not paying attention when a tile flips.
Right, because there's a lot of times where you're trying to think about your next turn so that you can reduce some of that in-between downtime. All right. This is something that if you've gone through the campaign, you've unlocked some. Should we go through that?
Yeah, of course.
All right, so if you've gone through the campaign, which this game has a little 5-game campaign that slowly introduces a couple of basic rule changes. There introduces the vast crystals cave, all right, or tile. So let's put it in a scenario where we are in this situation here. We got our large location there, and this has been revealed, and you now have this situation. Now, it seems to make sense looking at this, but some people think, well, I already looked at this, so I can travel through this to get to here and explore this tile. You cannot explore through the vast crystals.
Yeah, it actually leaves the white border here. If we flip a few of these others, it leaves the white border as a reminder that you can't count your trails through that. But this can be a very simple mistake as well. If people aren't double checking with the resource that you're spending, and you just go, well, I can spend 3 to get to here or 2 to get to here. Well, the issue is that in order to build around to get onto this, or in order to go ahead and settle over here, you'd have to go around this tile or reveal this one and figure out if there's a quicker, more accessible pathway.
Yep. So really, I think the people watching this video who have experience with this, they're going to know that. But someone in their game group is going to make that argument, and you can confidently turn that down and say, no, that's not the rule. It's on the card, and I think there is a page at the end where it talks about that. But that's something that people oftentimes will go, well, it's explored, so if it's explored, it's explored.
Yeah.
But that's a unique situation.
Point number 6, I think.
Yep. When you're endgame scoring, you're going to count your points.
I never remember this because this is different from that. It feels different from that. This is an icon indicating that the number of these that I have, the number of these artifacts that I have, score for the number here.
Yep.
However,
this counts as one.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like they should just give you a set of 3 to start with or something.
Nah, I like this because,
it just feels off to me. It's something I don't...
It also saves the publisher for the cost of having to...
I totally understand.
...print and create those.
I totally understand. In my brain, I don't associate this with these. I worked hard to get these. This was just already here.
Yeah.
I was already scoring a point for all of these.
Bonus!
It's bonus, but it's really important for endgame scoring because if one person is calculating their score and they're doing it
based on the 2
times every lightning bolt, they're going to be at a really steep deficit compared to someone who's actually doing it correctly and they're doing 3 times lightning bolt or so. Each one of these can score in the range of like 5 to 10 or so on average. So that multiplication matters a ton.
Yep. What number are we on now?
I think 7.
Okay, so number 7. When it comes to population, one, and I don't know that people forget this necessarily, although during the game you may forget this part during the game, even though you know the rule. You can populate cities with more than one, not yourself more than one, but more than one player can go there.
It's easy to look out on the board and just assume a location that has someone else's color on it is already occupied and not accessible to you. On top of that, for new players, you need to remind them that it's an available part of the strategy. People who are experienced with this game that just want a quick refresher, it's a nice thing to know, but this probably isn't going to blow your mind. For a player who's only 1 to 3 plays in, this is really critical because unlocking some of these abilities, especially on the asymmetric side, is your entire engine.
It's a good portion of it. And then additionally, any person who's there, you have to pay them a library book in addition to whatever library book it costs.
And it escalates. If you're playing a higher player count game and there's 2 or 3 people at that location already.
Each player, you reduce your library book by that, and they get to increase their library book by 1.
Yeah.
So that applies to large locations as well.
Yeah, so the first one to get there is going to have a little bit of an advantage because other people are probably going to want to show up, and so they'll get that extra little push at the end of the game.
Absolutely, and it just makes it more expensive. All right, so moving on.
Point number 8, I believe.
Now, this is not necessarily a rule, but this is something that's overlooked frequently.
Oh, you're going to mention me on this?
The switch action.
Oh, okay.
And I'm guilty of this too. Your switch, it is an action, it's not a free action, and it is a reminder on your reminder card, but people forget to use this.
Yeah.
Often.
Yeah, this resets every time you do a hibernate phase. So when you go into the cryopods and pull back your cards and you're ready for the next cycle, I glance down probably 50% of the time and realize I didn't flip my switch. I didn't flip my switch early enough that it matters. So now I'm forced into a hibernate because I don't want to do a switch flip right off the bat. But I, for instance, might have played down a card into a location that could have been utilized much more effectively to extend my turn or let me play a more powerful card in order to get a single piece of food or a single gear to take another more sophisticated action. If you remember to flip your switch, you can copy someone else's top action, gaining the resources and not sacrificing a very valuable worker placement location on your own tableau.
Yep. And this is something else that if you're an experienced player, you're going to know this, but you have these light energy. These are free actions. You can use these on the turn that you hibernate.
Not something that, for me,
was intuitive.
Just clicks. It's not intuitive that I can just, grab them and use the last of them before resetting them at the, during my hibernate phase
in the exact same turn.
Yeah.
So that is something that oftentimes people will waste these.
If you've got extra lightning bolts and you can put them to use, do it. You might as well.
Do it, hibernate, and get them back immediately, all in the same action.
And I think are we on 10 or are we on 9?
I think that was, I don't know if we're on 9 or 10.
I didn't declare 9.
Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 things written down, but some of these we multipled on to other things. The last one was something that...
Top 10 list. That's bad for the algorithm.
We've covered 12 of those 13 things already.
Good for the viewer.
So the last thing that we put down here was what you mentioned, and that is, and I'm not sure that it's necessarily a rule, but more a strategic reminder that the card cascading. When you're looking at, playing cards that allow you to play another card.
So I added this one specifically because I think it's not only a cool thing to remember, Shira figured out how to do it, and when she mentioned it and did it actually during her turn, it hit me that I hadn't even thought of it as a possibility or as a potential. So if I can find a card in here that gives me a card play with a little build on the bottom, there's got to be one somewhere in here because here we go.
Yep.
So this card, for instance, allows me to play down another yellow card and has this ruinous portion on the bottom. That means I can play a card underneath it, triggering everything up the line. I normally think of that in terms of extra resources or a bonus action that I get to take, like spend something to get something, like a little energy or spark back. However, if you are one of the lucky people to have one of these powerful play card cards, you can double up on this, meaning you can play one down and then, hear me out, you can go ahead and, where's another sequence? Where's the sequence? Look at this, look. I can play this down. I play that yellow down. That allows me to play another yellow card. I then stick another yellow card underneath this, allowing me to go ahead and play a gray card and another yellow card. Yep. Or, for instance, like you were going to show off, you could stick this down, allowing you to move up a track. And then for your second action, I could play this down, which would get me the entire sequence again. It just kind of chains and multiplies. It makes sense for resources. It doesn't always cross my mind for cards. And cards it means that you can play in a single action 2, 3, 4 cards.
Deck building is
right
a significant portion of the game. And the rule clarification on this that I have seen some people get wrong or get confused by is this is play a card from your hand that is that color, not draw a card from the
it has a plus icon in it if you're going to be picking it up from the pile.
So some of it's just iconography clarification.
There is, by the way, a very, very handy on BGG. If you're watching this and you're not familiar with Board Game Geek, you can go on there and find things like player aids, player references, iconography guides for games such as this that didn't include a player aid card. They just included the rulebook, which has to be shared amongst players.
Yep.
So we went ahead and printed these out. I used some scrapbooking tape to get them all nice and stuck together. And this is just a community-made, fan-made, extremely helpful guide, especially for new players, but even for experienced players, to recall and make sure you're getting iconography and the specific usage of it correctly.
And shout out to whoever, and I don't know who it was, but shout out to whoever put this together. Anybody in the BGG community that spends the time and energy and their own expertise in how to format these and create them in user interface ways that are like, wow, this makes sense.
It's really well done.
A lot of things, a lot of games have those. It is an excellent resource, and I genuinely, as a board gamer, thank the people out there who do this kind of work and post it for everyone to use.
The way this is designed, where you have icons on two sides and the text going in little blocks underneath them, like
excellent use of space.
Someone is very professional in the way that they built this out. And a lot of things relate to each other too. Your card icons are right across from each other, so you're looking at the same location. The resources that you're getting are right across. The victory points that we already pointed out.
Yep.
It really helps quite a bit for this game. It's a game that needs those iconography guides and didn't actually provide them. Any more rules points that we wanted to make sure people were aware of?
That was the ones that we wrote down that we brainstormed out as we played, and I think we've covered it with a few bonus.
It's not
double
too
ups.
complex of a game, honestly. Like, it's a pretty accessible, pretty straightforward board game with the strong caveat that there is a lot going on, and as the game continues, your turns escalate into this cacophony of joy and pleasure or deep dread
reactions.
or deep dread and realization that you're missing a lot of things as you go. So this list, I know, it's a big collection of many, many, many things that many of you are probably already aware of, but it's not only a good reminder. If you really examine your gameplays and you think it through and you watch some of the people who are new in your gaming group, a lot of these things get missed really easily, really quickly, and don't get caught during the course of play. So keep that in mind. Keep an eye on your game group. Be a good steward of the people you have around you, because if you're the person that's watching this video, you're likely the person that's hosting,
teaching it,
facilitating, teaching, supporting. And so with that being said, whatever the case, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Lie to them about at least one rule. That way you really establish your authority during the course of the game when you can correct them sternly and pretend like they're an idiot.
Yeah, gaslighting. Who doesn't love gaslighting?
That is actually the definition of gaslighting.
It very much is.
It's terrible. Don't do that. Don't do that. Show them this video. It not only gets me an extra view and probably a like and subscribe, but also will make sure they have a good understanding of all the rules they're likely to miss, which means you're not responsible for them at all. And so when they miss them, you can call them an idiot.
There you go.
Is that gaslighting still, or is that just like actually?
That's being
like diagnostic.
Crass.
That's like you're just calling it as it is.
Yeah, that's being crass without the CR.
Yeah, be rude to your friends. Don't trick them into thinking you're rude.
All right,
just really do it.
Thank you for watching.
I believe in you. We'll see you next time. Have fun at game night. We've been up late. We're having way too much fun. This is Red Bull. That was whiskey.
It's empty.
We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, that was the definition of gaslighting.
It very much was.
It's terrible. It's a terrible idea. You should not follow that advice.